inspiring next.
Hi everybody, my name is Shen Ge. This is SG2 on Space, episode number 27. So for those of you listening live, welcome. So, nice Thursday night at 8 o'clock Houston time as always. And as noted, we are the only weekly space show here in Houston. And you can catch us on www.weareA1.com. That's for the studio, Action One Media, nicely put behind me. You can follow them at facebook.com/Action One Media. And you can follow me at facebook.com/The Shen Show. That's TheShenshow. As well as you can follow me on YouTube at youtube.com/cast725, CAST725. I also have a separate blog on new companies in the space world, which you can follow at impacthound.com. Not follow, you can just go on there. So, in any case, let's get started, shall we? So, by the way, just a note that the phone lines, you guys can call in, ideally not now, but later in the show, once I actually, present some topics. And the phone line is 713-489-9250. You can call or you can text. All right, 713-489-9250. All right, so just some basic announcements. Apparently, if you guys don't know, NASA has a blog. And it tells you current status of, say, the space station, among other things. So you can go to blogs.nasa.gov/station report, which is kind of cool. Another interesting site, I found this. There's a site that shows the the meteors that's going through our atmosphere. Basically, the fireballs, shooting stars, whatever you call it, around the world, and with each event's calculated total energy. And these, by the way, are the fireballs, are the meteors actually hit the Earth. So JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab, NASA's JPL site, has that. And you can go to cneos.jpl.nasa.gov/fireballs to see it. So those are two pretty cool sites. Also, for anybody who knows any high school students or has a kid who's in high school, or you are a high school student, Amazon, this is kind of cool. Amazon is awarding 100 scholarships, totaling $4 million. So $4 million probably divided by 100 to support its new program of, it's focused on computer science. Makes sense. And the next round of applications starting November 2019. So I thought that might be an interesting opportunity for younger folks who might be listening, who's into science and technology and all that jazz. So, all right, with that stated, so a few tidbits here. So one of the biggest highlights, or depending on what you say, lowlights, is the recent shooting of a satellite by India. So that caused a huge amount of space debris. So let me just explain a little bit what happened. So the nation of India destroyed one of its own satellites on and essentially this operation called Mission Shakti was conducted using a new type of anti-satellite missile. So Modi, who's the Prime Minister, Narendra Modi of India, said that this basically meant that India has established itself as a space power, effectively joining the U.S., Russia, and China. Unfortunately, this demonstration of precision missile strikes in space as a demonstration of national capability and pride has caused a huge cloud of orbital debris in low Earth orbit. And NASA and a bunch of other people are not very happy. So specifically NASA Bernstein said this debris poses an unacceptable risk to the International Space Station, where there's currently 6 astronauts. All right. So Bernstein made this statement on April 1st at NASA headquarters. So NASA is continuing to monitor, and others are continuing monitoring the debris field, and basically updating it hourly basis to see what risk it presents. Bridenstine, NASA administrator, said that the risk of collision with the ISS has increased by 44% over a period of just 10 days. That's pretty significant. Unfortunately, as Franz von der Dunk, who's a professor of space law, said, there's no binding international legal rule yet which prohibits the wanton creation of space debris. So, in other words, there's no law which prevents any country from shooting down, your own satellites. So, in any case, just a note though, since 2002, the world's space powers have complied with an informal code of conduct to avoid the creation of space junk, and the UN has endorsed a resolution along those lines. So, in other words, this is not, India's action was not complying with that, let's just say. So the Indian satellite was just struck in an altitude of around 300 kilometers, about 185 miles, which is lower than the 410 kilometer, 254 miles used by the ISS and most satellites. So, in any case, a lot of Indians and some others say this should be safe. Like, most of the debris should, drop back into the atmosphere. So that may be true. However, the ISS, I believe, some of its orbit does dip below that, if I'm not mistaken. So, in any case, some other folks, at least in the commercial industry, was not happy either. For instance, the small satellite company Planet, has put out a statement that said, we categorically condemn the anti-satellite missile intercept recently conducted by India's Defense Department. Space should be used for peaceful purposes, and destroying satellites on orbit severely threatens the long-term stability of the space environment for all space operators. On another note, if we cross a pond to Europe, European Space Agency, ESA's Clean Space Initiative, they're apparently an organization, a part of ESA, that's working to prevent the creation of space debris in orbit. So, and in the future, they're planning to somehow remove pieces of debris from the orbit. So, ideally, you don't create any more, because these technologies have not been implemented yet. And even if they are, I don't think you can just go and suck up all the debris, right? So let's not try to create any more. So, ESA's Clean Space Initiative, that's pretty interesting. I know here in the here in the States, we also have programs like that as well. But like I said, nobody has implemented any method to actually get rid of space debris. So I suppose we'll all just keep tracking. Hopefully no astronaut get in the way. I don't think it's going to be like that movie Gravity, which, by the way, I really don't like because it has a very negative... It's just pessimistic, all right? Everybody dies and stuff. It's like, ugh. Okay, that aside, my personal view aside, is not going to be catastrophic like that. But you don't want a runaway situation, right? So in that particular movie, that showed like a terrible runaway situation. So here we're not quite there yet, and thankfully most of this debris is below the space station, but we got to be careful. Ideally, these things don't happen again. So, all right. With that said, I think we're going to take a short little break. Once we come back, I would like to go into the great beyond and talk about Mars. Well, let's see. Exocomets and black hole pictures or simulations of such. That should be interesting. So, SG2 on space.
Put your money where your community is. Get in the action at weareA1.com.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It's your girl Janetta with A1 Live Pop-Up here at African Fashion Week Art, Wine, and Culture event. We are having an amazing time. They have some lovely art pieces to see. So go ahead, get down here. You still have time. Everybody get in the action.
This is an A1 Live pop-up. We are here with 100 black men. Went out to cover this event, and we hope you guys are enjoying yourselves. Here we go. If you won't know, come on out to 5115. It's the General Galleria address, but you'll know where we are at. Get in the action, A1 Live.
Get in the action at weareA1.com.
All right, so we are back in the studio. You're listening to SG2 on Space, episode number 27. So before we went on break, we made a special announcement about basically special news: the Indians shooting down their own satellite and generating a whole lot of space debris, which happened late March. So, yeah. So continuous update on that. Okay, so also as noted, if you guys have inquiries or questions or comments, you can either post things on the Facebook page as we go along, or YouTube, or text/call 713-489-9250. All right. So, okay. With that, let us talk about something that's been really interesting. Astronomers have confirmed that Mars has methane. Now you might think, yeah, okay, big deal. Well, this has been thought of for a while, but we finally confirmed it. So for 15 years, in fact, research groups have claimed to see traces of methane. So now a group using data from European Space Agency's Mars Express spacecraft says they have clearly identified methane above Gale Crater on June 16th. Okay. Actually, you know what? Hold on. Oh, this was right. Okay. So what happened then was the first time this was, actually I should say a significant what do you call it? Timeline in this was on June 16th, 2013, just one day after NASA's Curiosity rover sent a notice of methane spike from the ground in Gale Crater. Okay. That aside, all this is essentially saying, hey, okay, what does this mean? Well, on Earth, most biological processes are the main things that create methane, okay? So from microbes to even us humans, right? So underground Martian ecosystem is possibly means, okay, there's life, right? Of course, there's also geological processes that can also produce it. So, we still don't know for sure. That's a problem with a lot of these chemistry. You might think it's life, but then it could be a bunch of rocks or whatever geological formations, all right? So, we're going to see what happens here. Let's continue, right? The search for life is never over. Speaking of the search for life, if we shift out a little further here, let's talk about the telescope called Tess, all right? I mentioned that a while ago. It's the successor to Kepler, which Kepler, as I mentioned a bunch of times, was the first space telescope specifically dedicated to look for exoplanets, right? And exoplanets are planets outside of our solar system, which we've discovered over 2,000 of them thanks to Kepler. So unfortunately, Kepler had a limited lifetime, and now there is successors. One of them is called Tess, Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite. Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite. So over the next 2 years, Tess is expected to find roughly, oh my gosh, instead of 2,000, over 20,000 new exoplanets hiding among the glow of the sky's brightest stars. All right. So, additionally, among those, Tess will discover dozens of Earth-sized planets, up to 500 planets less than twice the size of Earth. Now, that's pretty impressive, but what about the smaller stuff? Can it detect comets? Well, it turns out it can. So, but before we continue, I would like to play a little video of what exactly Tess is and why it's so important and how its technique actually works. So, Tess uses something called transit, all right? And while we're pulling that up, I'll just briefly explain what transit is. Transit essentially is when you have a star and you have a planet, say, or some object that crosses in front of it, it reduces the amount of light coming from the star, right? Since you have a shadow. So with that, astronomers using very sensitive telescopes, such as, Tess, for instance, a satellite with that giant telescope, could detect that there's a dip in what's known as a light curve, the amount of light detected. And from the amount of change of the light, we can, using math and statistics and so forth, you can figure out how big the object is. So with that, it's pretty cool. So it's basically like you're using like a shadow blocking light to figure out how big the shadow is, which is either a planet or, it turns out, in certain cases, a comet. So let's play a little short clip on briefly 4 minutes, a couple minutes, describing what Tess is.
In the last few decades, we have found thousands of worlds around other stars. A new NASA astrophysics mission will help us find many more.
Tess, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite, is NASA's newest exoplanet mission. It's being led out of MIT, and it's going to find thousands of new planets orbiting bright nearby stars. And it's going to build upon the legacy of the Kepler mission, only it's going to focus on nearby bright stars that are sprinkled across the whole sky, and it's going to help us answer a really important question, and that is, which of our near-stellar neighbors has planets?
During its 2-year survey, Tess will look for signs of planets, ranging from Earth-size to giants larger than Jupiter. Tess will search for these new worlds, or exoplanets, using transits, the same method as the Kepler mission. As a planet passes in front of its star, it blocks some of the light, causing a slight drop in brightness. Tess can detect those subtle dips and even use them to determine some basic features of the planets, such as their size and orbit. Each of Tess's cameras has a 16.8 megapixel sensor covering a 24-degree square, large enough to contain an entire constellation. Tess has 4 of these cameras arranged to view a vertical strip of the sky called an observation sector.
The coverage of the Tess cameras is unprecedented in terms of the amount of sky that they can actually see at any given time, and also their ability to cover such a broad portion of the sky. The types of targets that Tess will allow us to find will enclose essentially all of the bright nearby stars.
Tess will watch each observation sector for about 27 days before rotating to the next one. covering first the south and then the north, to eventually build a map of 85% of the sky. This coverage, about 350 times what Kepler first observed, will make Tess the first exoplanet mission to survey almost the entire sky. Tess will fly in a highly elliptical orbit that maximizes the amount of sky the spacecraft can image and is carefully timed with the orbit of the Moon. It will spend most of each 13.7-day orbit collecting data, and then, as it passes closer to Earth, it will transmit that data to the ground. Because Tess's observation sectors overlap, it will have an area near the pole under constant observation. This region is easily monitored by the James Webb Space Telescope, which allows the two missions to work together to first find and then carefully study exoplanets. Since most of the exoplanets found by Tess will orbit bright stars, missions like Webb will be able to measure the spectra of starlight absorbed by the planet's atmospheres, which can indicate what they're made of. Ground-based measurements of the Tess exoplanets can determine their masses. Combining the masses with Tess's size measurements reveals densities, allowing scientists to better understand the exoplanet's compositions.
The thing that we're really excited about with Tess is the way that it'll actually build on the momentum that we started with Kepler. So Tess is going to take that same search approach but apply it to the vast majority of the sky, which still hasn't really been looked at in detail when searching for exoplanets. And by focusing especially on planets that orbit bright nearby stars, Tess allows us to start looking at things like planet composition and atmospheric makeup. And that'll then be crucial when we want to start looking around stars that are even further away and in deeper parts of the galaxy as well.
Tess is the vanguard of a new era of exoplanet study and will forever expand our understanding of worlds beyond our own.
So that was fairly inspirational, but I think it gave a pretty good graphic overview of what Tess is and, you know, how it's actually detecting things, right? So on the video, it only talked about planets, which is cool. But recently, astronomers have detected an exoplanet passing in front of one of the sky's brightest stars, called Beta Pictoris. All right, Beta Pictoris, which is located about 65 light years away. So, well, we've seen hints of this from using instruments such as spectrographs, but this light curve detection is very strong proof because it has a shape that was predicted by another astronomer 20 years ago by an astronomer. So the reason being that the comet's light curve, how the light diminishes, and is different than a planet's. So let me tell you what they do with planets. So when searching for exoplanets, astronomers look for symmetrically shaped dips that repeat over time, right? So every time the planet goes around, you know, it dips again, the light curve, right? It dips, you know, maximize when it's directly in front of the star, right? So so then by analyzing the character, this indicates a symmetrical body, right? Such as a spherical exoplanet orbiting in front of a star. All right, so then we can figure out what the mass is, what the radius is, all right? But when we search for exocomets, astronomers don't look for symmetrical dips. Why? Well, because comets have those giant tails, right? So what you will see is that the star's brightness drops quickly at first, then takes its time returning to a baseline level. All right, since comets have extended tail of dusty debris behind them, right? So these tails also block light. So you end up leaving an imprint, those leave an imprint on the light curve too. So currently we think that disk of gas and dust around young stars, such as Beta Pictoris, is a prime candidate for comets, as comets are believed to be, you know, building blocks left over from planetary formation. And they have, you know, they're still in that early stage. All right. So, for instance, a 2014 study stated that there's spectroscopic evidence of thousands of exoplanets in the Beta Pictoris system. All right, so we shall see. I mean, given that note, we should be able to find a lot more of this. All right, you can read this paper called "A Transiting Exocomet Detected in Broadband Light" by Tess in the Beta Pictoris system. You can read it on Astronomy and Astrophysics publication, and it's also available on the preprint website Arxiv, ARXIV. All right, so just a note there. All right, so moving on here, that is cool, seeing the exocomets, right? Well, would you like to see a black hole? Because apparently that's possible. All right, so European Southern Observatory, ESO, okay. They announced their first black hole picture. All right, not yet. They are going to announce it. So what exactly is this? All right, so they've created what's like a virtual telescope the size of the Earth. So the virtual telescope is more properly called a very long baseline interferometer. All right. So in other words, instead of going into fancy optics, which nobody would understand, that's not true. But anyway, I'm not going to it. What it means is that they've linked up radio antenna around the globe to observe the same objects. You basically have a bunch of sensors all around the globe. All right. So this creates a high angular resolving power. So essentially, using a bunch of smaller telescopes or radio telescopes around the world, we have an equivalent capability as one giant telescope, say the size of the Earth. Now, it's infeasible to build a telescope the size of the Earth, but you can use a bunch of telescopes or radio detector, basically radio telescopes, spread all around the Earth, right? So in that case, we have pretty much the equivalent resolving power. All right. So what's going on here? Well, say back in 2018, these guys they had these scientists basically released an image, a simulative image of what they think they will see if they're able to see, say a black hole. Okay, now obviously we can't see a black hole because, well, the whole point is that it's black. But it turns out that you can at least see the stuff around it. So, essentially, the main thing when you think of one, you may think, okay, well, what is there? There's nothing, right? Well, no, that's not true. There's something called the event horizon, which lies on the perimeter of what's known as the singularity. The singularity is where, well, infinite mass, right? Infinite density. So the event horizon is an area of space. You can think of it as a fence, an invisible border area, that if you cross it, well, you're stuck there forever, and you're going to get sucked in because you will have to travel faster than the speed of light to escape. All right? So there's a bunch of other features, such as accretion disks, relativistic jets, photon spheres, which can provide evidence of black holes as well. But remember, this is just a simulation, right? So they used real data to simulate this, to create simulations of the visualization of where you see it. So they have two targets here to be simulate. One is called Sagittarius A star. That's pretty much the gigantic, massive black hole that sits in the center of our Milky Way galaxy. And the second is an even more gigantic black hole in M87 galaxy. All right. So, quick question for you guys. So there's some black holes that emit jets of material while others do not. So does Sagittarius A, the giant one in our Milky Way, does that emit? No, it doesn't. Okay, that's not really a very good question, but do you know why? Why does that not emit, whereas the one in M87 galaxy does? Okay, no idea. All right. Yes, I see yawning, so to speak. Hypothetical yawning. All right. Well, that's one of the reasons why we need to do this, because actually astronomers don't know either. All right. So we don't know why some of them emit strong radiation and material while others don't. Also, general relativity, by the way, works very well except at the singularity. It breaks down completely. Now, if we're able to simulate this, maybe we can get into some insight on why and maybe we can, I don't know if that can help us resolve the complete breakdown of physics as we know it at the singularity, but maybe it could provide some pathway for us to move forward. So we shall see. Remember, April 10th is when they were going to, I think, do their, when they do their release and do a little press conference. So no doubt, keep my eyes out. I will post and share, and definitely talk about it next time as well. So with that, let's see here. Why don't we move on to something that people are actually doing, so to speak? I like the exotic stuff, but let's see what's going on closer to Earth, shall we? So first of all, you guys probably know about what's going on with SpaceX, right? So I'm not talking about their Falcon Heavy launch. I'm talking about their planned mission to go to, planned spacecraft to go to Mars, all right? So SpaceX has successfully fired a Starhopper prototype spacecraft here in Brownsville, Texas. So this prototype vehicle is a Starhopper. What that means, why do they call it that? It's supposed to test various vehicle technologies, okay, that will travel to space. Okay, it could go to the moon as well. That's our target, at least initially. So it will, it's still in the future, right? It's supposed to be able to carry 100 people. That's like, oh my gosh, right? That's a lot, all right? Like the shuttle, I believe, could carry like 7 people, all right? And that was a lot. All right, so the Starship will be able to carry 100 people. Now, it's going to require the use of a first-stage super heavy rocket, all right? So that's the Starship itself, okay? The Starhopper, what is being tested right now, is a smaller version, and they're testing the Raptor engines. But still, it's pretty impressive, since this technology will eventually pave the way for a Starship that's going to be able to carry 100 people around there to go to the moon or Mars. So the Starhopper is still pretty big. It's made of stainless steel, and it's about 60 feet tall. So yeah. So, in any case, this is kind of cool. Let's see what happens here, right? Cross our fingers. Hopefully all these tests go well. So, in any case, SpaceX is going to build both the Starship, like the one that can carry about 100 people, as well as a rocket that could lift the Starship, the Super Heavy, at the Boca Chica facility near Brownsville and Cape Canaveral. So, and Elon Musk is working on regulatory approvals for launching these eventually. So 2020 is the proposed flight for the Starship's first flight. Now that is highly ambitious, so it may not be terribly realistic, right? But let's see what happens. Okay, remember he's already sold this on a seat on the Starship to Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa, as I mentioned a few months back. So, and of course, our other highlight from SpaceX is March 2019. Its Crew Dragon capsule successfully completed demo, right? But let me not go into that. The other exciting news, let's go to Israel, halfway around the world, almost. Space IL, I mention them every time. Well, it's cool. They have entered lunar orbit without a hitch, right? So, exactly, like that. It has entered lunar orbit without a hitch. Okay, that was interesting. That was clearly an unintentional demonstration. All right, if anybody noticed. So the Bereshit spacecraft, BERESHEET, enters orbit around the moon. The lander fired its main engines for 6 minutes, starting at 10:18 Eastern Time on April 4th, and slowed down the spacecraft by about 1,000 kilometers per hour, so enough for it to be in orbit. Otherwise, it would shoot past the moon, right? So now it's in an elliptical orbit with a paraloon of 500 kilometers and an apoloon of 10,000 kilometers. In other words, the closest point to the moon would be 500. Furthest would be 10,000. All right. So they've been in space for 6 weeks now. Wow, it's go by fast. So still some time until the landing. Remember, they launched on February 21st, right? So what is it now? About April. So, also remember that even though they did not win the $100 million, $20 million Lunar Google X Prize, nobody did. since nobody made it in time, they are still getting a consolatory moonshot prize of $1 million, for making it so far. All right, so, and remember, Space IO is nonprofit, and all of theirs is through donations, which is amazing how much they've gotten. So, now the Israel Space Industries, which is not a nonprofit, they actually built the lander. But cool, this. But this is their project though. Space IO, that's their project. So, that is pretty neat. So let's see what happens. Can't wait for them to land. All right. Okay. Another thing. All right. Moving a little further out here. Why not? So we gone from Earth testing with SpaceX to Space ILs, parachute spacecraft to pretty much the moon, to Hayabusa 2, which is even further out, which has been orbiting the comet, the asteroid Ryugu, right? Remember last time it kind of departed? So it landed, picked up some samples, and then departed, right? And left that weird spot. Who knows what happened. Well, guess what? They're getting ready for an even bigger fireworks display. They are going to launch an explosive box at the asteroid, and then detonate it, and it's going to create a crater up to 10 meters wide. And they're going to do this on April 5th at 2:36 Universal Time. Okay, so depending on how, you can look up your own clock, UTC, all right? So why are they, destroying a chunk of the asteroid, all right? Well, this goal of the Small Carry-On Impactor Experiment, SCI, is to learn about how asteroids like Ryugu, RYUGU, change over time. Specifically, JAXA, Japanese Space Agency, JAXA scientists are hoping to learn how big a crater will form on Ryugu from an impactor of no mass and speed by comparing before and after pictures of the crater site, what the materials beneath the surface that haven't been exposed to space weathering look like, whether or not the surface moves easily when struck by an impactor, how easily boulder shatters due to impacts if the impactor happens to hit a boulder. So, a lot of uncertainty here, right? And they can't aim it exactly. It's like you trying to shoot something at an amusement park, one of those little games, right? So, except it has a far worse margin of error. You can be off by 200 meters here, all right? So you shoot a target, you could be off by 200 meters. So that's the best that you can do, I guess. All right, so how big is this crater going to be? Well, most models believe it's up to 10 meters, but it could be bigger, right? Depends on what the surface type is. So the crater depth is expected to be about 1/10 of its diameter. So, yeah, so that should be interesting, right? We shall see what happens. So what exactly is it going to do? Well, it's not going to drop it directly in Ryugu surface and heavily contain the area with plastic explosives. So instead, this bomb is going to be like a space gun, right? It fires a copper plate into the surface. And the space gun, the bullet is made of tantalum, so to ensure that it's, you don't confuse it with the natural metal on Ryugu, right? So with that, let's see a example of this, since they did this testing on Earth in Japan, which is pretty darn impressive, and it's only a few seconds, so you can see what will happen. Yep. Yeah, I don't think you want to be anywhere near there. You'll probably be completely vaporized. So that's what's going to happen to the asteroid, guys, except the asteroid surface is different, right? So it may make even a bigger crater. All right. So that is cool. Any case, after they do that, this is cool too. They will decide whether to perform a second touchdown, either in the artificial they just created, which would be really cool, or a nearby location called S01, which they have observed in detail back in early March. And so either location, I would go for the crater. That seems cool. So, but a second touchdown, if that's decided, wouldn't happen until June 2019 at the earliest. So let's see. I can't wait to see that's actually happening really soon. Wow. Yeah, wow. Yeah. This is actually going to happen. They're in less than 24 hours. Wow. All right. So with that, let's take a quick little break. Once we get back, we can finish up talking about Mars helicopter things, and then I really want to talk about astrobiology, or really just aliens.
Put your money where your community is. Get in the action. Action 1. Independent thinkers working together. Inspiring action in media. Get in the action. Inspire today. Join us by being a sponsor at weareA1.com.
Growing up as a black kid in New Jersey, all I ever wanted to do was be a pro athlete. All of my role models were black athletes. And every time I would stare out the window, look at the sky, and wonder what I'd be in the future, it always had to do with me catching some crazy football and scoring a touchdown. When it came to the point that I was told that I would not be able to play on an organized sports team for the rest of my life, it was something that I really didn't even know how to stomach in the moment. And I remember walking out of my cardiologist's office and just sitting in the hallway and breaking down for a few minutes just because it was something that I just couldn't plan for and couldn't account for. And I realized that in that moment, my entire life was going to be changed. And all of those dreams and hopes and aspirations that I had were going to go out of the window.
Man, you still here? Go on and subscribe.
Get in action.
Yo, we back at it again, baby.
What?
Get in action.
3.
Get in action.
Tell me what is the deal, tell me what is the deal. So I challenge you today to start strong.
Get in the action.
Tell me what is the deal. Cause I'm calling for you.
Get in the action.
Can you feel that? See, I'm calling for you. Can you feel that? See, I'm calling for you. Can you feel that? See, I'm calling for you. Say how you really.
All right, guys. So we are back in the studio, and so before I dive into the crazy stuff, so to say, or stuff where you really need to pay attention and look up, let me talk about what JPL is doing with the Mars helicopter. All right. So we've launched all these rovers and lander. Oh, by the way, SG2 in space, episode 27, with your host Shen Ge. All right. We are a1.com or www.facebook/The Shen Show, or on YouTube, youtube.com/CEST725. That's mine. All right, so with that, Mars helicopter. So we have launched rovers, landers, orbiters on Mars, around Mars, but never something that flies in the atmosphere, except maybe now. All right, the Mars 2020 rover mission may carry a Mars helicopter. All right, why have this not been done? There's huge challenges to fly on Mars. First of all, the power source can't be combustion, unless it's hydrogen, because there's no oxygen on the Martian atmosphere. Also, the atmosphere is super thin, so if you're going to use like a plane, something like a plane, you need enormous wings, which is really a huge problem, right? Since then, how are you going to fit that in your spacecraft? All right, you can't control it remotely from Earth, since there's a signal delay of about half hour. If you guys seen The Martian, you know that, or you may just know it from watching other movies, or because you read or something, or you did math. So now, what's the advantage here, though? Well, a flying device obviously will travel faster than any rover. Remember, it took Curiosity, I don't know, a month maybe to travel a mile, something like that. It was super slow. Okay, so essentially, this device, the Mars helicopter, could be used to scope out, say, landing areas for other missions. And you could explore raised terrains, even places where a rover can't go, right? You can fly into lava pipes and basically go places where, you know, typical landers or rovers cannot go. All right. So how does it get around the fact of actually flying on Mars? Well, it's pretty cool. It's solar powered, and so it has its own tiny panels to charge its batteries, recharge its battery. It uses what's known as contra-rotating rotors. All right. So contra-rotating rotors are necessary to begin because with a single rotor, the fuselage will rotate the opposite way. Helicopters, if you notice, they always have one rover like that. I mean, not rover, one rotor, the main rotor, and then the rotor at the end, right? So they always have something like that. So, anyways, yeah. So they have done some tests, have logged over 75 minutes now. Let's see if we can actually see a little bit of it. I don't think we can play the full amount. So let's start from like say 30 seconds and I don't know, go to like 50 seconds. Let's see. Done. Right. So I doubt you guys want to continue and see like 10 more minutes of that, since that's pretty much what it does. But great, that can last that long, right? Wonderful. All right. So good luck, JPL. Hopefully this is fully completed by the time the Mars 2020 rover mission is ready to launch, and then you can just package in there. Imagine that. So cool. All right. With that, I really want to talk about aliens. Or rather, I would like to say astrobiology, life in space, but heck, I mean, let's not curse here. I'm pretty sure they're already here. All right, that's my perspective. Okay, and here's something which I have just there's an interesting trend going on here. So for a really long time, you know, people thought, okay, aliens, UFOs, whatever. I mean, sure, some people believe it. But then they're cuckoos. Okay, this is by like, quote unquote, say the professional scientific world, or sometimes, you know, people in esteemed positions, right? But no, there's more scientists and engineers and so forth now who's believing it. So, for instance, there's an organization called Mutual Unidentifying Flying Objects Network. Okay, MUFON. MUFON, all right? So it's a nationwide organization that's been around for 50 years, and you can file cases for it. Like, say you have encountered something with an alien encounter, you can file a case number with your local chapter, all right? So good thing to know, you're not crazy. All right, and MUFON groups actually meet every month to discuss cases, all right? So, for instance, in Florida, the SpaceX group is made up of, has about 120 members, and some of them have, you know, former NASA employees and engineers. Across the U.S., number about 3,500, with additional offices in 42 countries. So, in the last 2 years, scientists, politicians, professionals have increasingly been willing to touch this taboo subject. So, and of course, if you recall, in December 2017, New York Times has uncovered that the U.S. recently, this is not like 40 years ago when they did Project Blue Book, recently U.S. has gone to find a secret $22 million 5-year project to study UFO claims, right? And since then, there's been respected researchers such as Harvard University's astronomer department chairman, department head, and at least one scientist from NASA has said, okay, this is very possible, all right? Now, why? I think one reason is because, back to our quote-unquote accepted science, where we have discovered a huge number of exoplanets, a good chunk of them are Earth-like, right? So it's even more unfathomable to think that we're the only ones. And given how many planets are out there and how long, you know, they had to develop with life, say, it's pretty reasonable to assume that these guys are able to travel interstellar here. And we've also come up with interstellar ideas of our own, which, given the lack of funding and resources, have not transpired yet. But it's like, hey, we got these real physics ideas that can work. So if we can make them work, why can't other species make it work? Of course they can. And, all right. So, but let's see here. All right. So let me give you one example that happened recently, which is crazy. Well, not recently, a few years ago, but I find it quite interesting. All right. So it was a Thursday in March 2013. All right. And this was in Florida, Kissimmee. That's near Orlando. So what happened is that Trish Bishop, okay, she saw this thing appear as a hologram at first. It's like, appears a hologram at first, so kind of like not solid, then solid, suddenly right at the edge of the forest behind her home, right? Trish Bishop. And what did it look like? Well, he, I don't know why she thinks it's a he, but anyways, he stood tall, at least 6'3", perhaps 220 pounds, very muscular, wearing a form-fitting tan-colored uniform, boots, and gloves. When he turned around, his face, she's remembered, Trish Bishop remembered, that stopped her, okay? So what did his face look like? Wow, bulging eyes jutting so far out of the sockets that Bishop wondered whether he could close them, skin white as chalk, and a jaw so large it dispelled any notions that she had a visitor being human, all right? So if you see that, all right, bulging eyes, skin white as chalk, and a jaw so large that's inhuman, yeah, you probably have an alien there or a monster. Okay, so in this case, it's an alien, okay? All right. So, and she basically further described it as, if you compare a human jawbone to his, we will be a chihuahua to a pit bull. All right, that's a huge difference. So what did she do? Well, paralyzed with fear, as is fairly reasonable, she just stood there and watched, all right? She watched as what she thought to be an alien, which I believe is also alien, appeared to climb invisible steps, stopping often to snatch glances at her from where she sat on her back porch. Oh, she was sitting, okay. So when he was about 10 feet off the ground on his invisible stairs, he turned his back to her and pulled himself up into, well, I presume a UFO, and was gone. So, and then of course she thought, oh my gosh, I've got a freaking alien in my backyard. And she didn't say anything because she did not know about MUFON back then. But then she reported it. Case number 84886. So, guys, wow. If you have a case like that, if you have situations like that, definitely, go put it up. So, anyway, there's people say there's no reason for her to lie. So you have credible witnesses like that, right? Okay. So, so what does she do now? Well, given that she works for the government, she decides she's on the hunt, which is kind of interesting. So she bought 3 hunting trackers on eBay and set them up on her backyard, just in case this guy returns, okay, or brings his buddies. So they're motion activated, and they'll go off in the night and capture 6,000 images. So, yeah, so she hasn't caught anything so far, but who knows? Yeah, so there's other cases like abduction cases and so on and so forth, but hey, that's we shall see, right? I mean, hopefully, if you guys ever experience something, let me know, all right? And definitely look up. So the other cool website I would say is the National UFO Reporting Center. Just this year, there's been over 30 reported cases in Texas alone of UFO sightings, okay? So, and it's on nuforc.org, okay? So, and you can read a lot of those entries, which I'm not going to bother to, since a lot of them have really poor grammar. I have a feeling people are just typing them on their phone when it happens. So, all right. That aside, let me briefly mention something weird else. I was looking into dark days, like suddenly crazy skies turning dark. And there are, like, since, that's kind of I tell you to look up. You don't always have to see UFOs. It could be natural phenomenon, so to say. Or, how should I put it? stuff which you can't explain that's happening to the sky, right? So, for instance, how do you explain this? In the year 934, so historically, let's go back in time, a Portuguese historian said that the sun lost its ordinary light for several months. Then an opening in the sky seemed to take place, with many flashes of lightning, and the full blaze of sunshine was suddenly restored. How the heck do you explain that? I mean, unless it's just totally making things up. All right. So, and remember, eclipses don't last for months, so it can't be that. September 29th, 1091. All right. Schirner said that there was a darkening on the sun which lasted 3 hours, and after which had a particular color which occasioned great alarm. Gosh, who knows what happened. Then 1857, there was a correspondent that wrote that reported that a total darkness at noon lasted for hours, which enveloped Amsterdam on a summer day about 1800. The day was fine, the air was calm, and there was no fog. Who knows? Probably one of the weirdest ones was Pernambuco. Man, do not know Portuguese. Pernambuco. Sounds weird. Okay, Brazil, on April 11th, 1860. About noon, in a cloudless sky, suddenly the light of the sun was diminished. The darkness increased, and even Venus was able to show. And then corona appeared around the sun. And the darkness lasted several minutes. Now, please note that this is not a solar eclipse, because the eclipses, you can predict it with high accuracy. That was on January 23rd and July 18th. It was not April 11th, 1860. What caused it? Who knows? You know? Weirdness, right? So, I just talk about a few other weird things that's going on that happened in the past. There's stuff going on in the sky all the time, guys. All right. So dark days is one. UFOs was another. Apparently there's raining blood clouds. Okay, so 582, year 582, at 3 places in Paris. Real blood, yes. This is so creepy. I think it's creepier than UFOs, honestly. Let's just say you go outside and suddenly it's raining. Except instead of raining rain, it's raining blood. Yep, that's happened historically. For instance, one was in year 582. So people stripped off their stained clothes, pretty much in horror. And even worse, in one case, a man woke to find the inside of his house splattered with blood. That sounds terrible. All right. So, yeah. And that 878, even more disgusting, shower of blood in Ireland, which apparently had lumps of gore along with it. And yeah, falling limbs and blood and all that. Mysteriously from the sky. Yep. Don't complain about the rain next time. At least you're not showered by blood and guts. All right. So, there's also weird cases of like meteorites hitting the ground, and then instead of seeing rock, they see like this weird jellyfish thing. I mean, not jellyfish, but like jelly thing, which doesn't. It's like, okay, what is going on here? No idea, right? So, yeah, that is really weird. Also, there's been, okay, you guys know about mirages. Some of them could be quite crazy in the sky, but there's, well, I would love to go talk about more, but let's save this for next time. I just have to say that, as always, definitely look up. And if you see something, you know, you're not hallucinating. You're not hallucinating, unless you're on drugs, then you might be. But otherwise, you're sane. By the way, that's one good reason I keep telling you guys, don't do drugs or get overly drunk, because then if you see something, people won't believe you, because they'll say, oh, you're just high or you know, drunk or something. Instead, you could say, I'm totally sober, and an alien was in my backyard, and he had a giant jaw, and I'm not hallucinating, and this is what happened. And here's a picture I tried to take, except it's super blurry. You could say that, and then people will be like, oh my gosh, you're right. All right, so with that, look up, okay? So this has been SG2 in Space, episode 27, with your host, Shen Ge, and we return next week, hopefully with a guest. So I'll let you guys know. All right, take care.
Peace, it's Brother Atum Ra, and you tuned in to Action One Network.